It's the internet. You're busy. Let's do this live from an undisclosed hotel room deep in the Colorado mountains. I am Jeff Grubb. I write for GamesBeat. I also do GrubbSnax here on Giant Bomb. And this is a news show where we talk about news and often make news. Who knows if I'll be doing any of that today. I've been very busy moving out of my house, and so I'm very tired. I woke up this morning and tried to get out of bed, and basically my heels, you know, the heels of your foot, I don't have those anymore. They crumbled before my very eyes and turned to dust. But hey, I am in a Holiday Inn Express, so I must be very smart now, right? That's the commercial. I know you guys love when I do references. You guys love my references to commercials from several years ago. Listen, if I sound weird, if I look funny, more so than normal, thank you for bearing with me. I like doing the show a whole bunch. The timing worked out great, so that we're not doing anything today. I got the kids over there. My wife is working. That's why, you know, we got a few days between when she's done working and when we're moving. And we're out of the old house. So, but I'm like, hey, I'm just going to be there, and there's an Ethernet cable and it's working great. So I figured we'd just do the show. So don't worry about me. I'm like really happy to be here doing this, kind of bringing some normalcy to my schedule. So I'm very excited about it. But also thank you for your patience and sort of dealing with the cheap setup I have going here. I still feel pretty good about it though. Let's get into it. So what do we do on this show? We talk about some news, and then we answer a bunch of questions. We're going to probably do a fair amount of questions today, but also I might make it a little bit shorter because I promised the kids I'd take them on a walk when I get done, and they're being very good right now, so I kind of want to reward them. But there is some stuff that we can talk about before we get to the questions, and if you do want to ask a question, there is the Ask a Question button there at the top of the page if you go to giantbomb.com/chat. If you're watching on Twitch, hello, I love you. Thank you for joining us. If you want to ask a question that I'll actually be able to see, just go to giantbomb.com/chat. Sign up there, do all the rigmarole, and you could join and be, interacting with the show, which is the whole point of the show. But first, let's say, we're here. We reached it. It is the summer game mess, which I have to say is feeling significantly less messy. Now, there's definitely going to be some mess and some sprawl. When I started the summer game mess, it was definitely just like a joke responding to Jeff Keighley's Summer Game Fest, which felt like this thing that was trying to capture all these disparate things that were happening all over the place to kind of be like the traffic cop, and then, sort of get the credit for being the guy that was like running the show. I don't need my headphones. Taking off the headphones, everybody. And so Summer Game Mess, I was like, oh yeah, I could do the same thing. And then last year, I think Summer Game Fest, his actual like broadcast that he did, got like 80 million, 90 million views or something like that. And when that happened, I think everyone was like, oh man, we should just stop doing our own weird bad shows and just go straight to Keighley and let him handle it. And that seems to be what's happening this year. That starts today with Sony's State of Play for PlayStation, which is in, a few hours. But there's been other stuff as well. People going to IGN as well. We'll tell, that's Sonic Frontiers thing. But I think a lot of people are like, yeah, Jeff, we'll just be part of your thing. And that's fine. Like, you've shown that you know what you're doing and you get a lot of viewers. And so it does feel like we are getting like about, not 1 week of stuff, but, E3 itself was spreading out as well. Feels like we're gonna get about 2 weeks of intermittent announcements and things like that. And that's really, it started yesterday, kind of, throughout this week, with stuff like IGN showing off that Sonic Frontiers thing. And there's a few other things that got announced. I've been busy, so I've been missing most of it. But I do know that today we get that State of Play. And then we get a little bit of Dragon Age news. Now, I want to tamper expectations immediately. Don't expect a lot. Do not expect... I don't think there's going to be like a trailer or gameplay or anything like that. And really, I'm not even sure of the reason why they're doing exactly this thing that they're doing. It seems a little bit weird, but in about an hour and a half or so, they should come out and say the name of the game. And I think that might be it. So if you are... okay. I always do this thing where I'm like, oh, it's, who's going to care about that? And then I remember BioWare fans exist and how nuts they are. Because this happened with Mass Effect, where I was talking about Mass Effect Legendary Edition, and I'm like, yeah, that sounds cool, man. I love those games. I'll play those games again. And then there were people who were just like showing up for the first time in my comments or whatever, or showing up on GamesBeat or showing up on in the YouTube comments and just losing their minds. Just the biggest fans in the world. Hang on, kiddo. Let me finish this and we'll go for that walk. Okay, guys? And then, so really, I think just dropping the name, some Dragon Age fans are probably going to be like, oh my God, like this is amazing. But I think if you are expecting more than that, today might be a little disappointing. But yeah, it seems like they're coming up with a name. It seems like they have their reasons. Again, I don't fully understand why we're going to get exactly, just this little thing and then they're going to move on. But maybe it's just they want to give fans a sign of life and say Dragon Age is still coming. Dragon Age 4 is still coming. Now, when is it coming? We've talked about it before on the show. If you're a regular viewer, a regular listener, you know this already. Nothing's changed there. But if you're just tuning in, I know more people watch during the E3 timeframe. If you're wondering when it's going to come, it's still not coming till at least the middle of next year, and then probably a little bit later towards the end of next year. So we're at least a year away, at least. And then probably closer to still a year and a quarter, year and a half off. Like, if we're talking about the end of next year or something like that. So, yeah, it's not coming out this year. It's not coming out the end of this fiscal year. Do not expect it before basically June of next year is the earliest. And then really, are they going to put it out in the summer? I doubt it. It's probably going to come out closer to the fall. But yeah, that's like the big news I can give you there. They're going to give you many of these details. They probably won't say a time frame because they haven't really been saying that much, except for they might say like, oh, Dragon Age blank. Yeah, the name is out there if you really want it. We've teased it on Twitter a little bit. Credit to Tom Henderson who started doing this stuff, started teasing this first this morning. If you really want to know the name, go check out his Twitter feed. He basically just said it. So at least as far as I know. I guess maybe they pulled a fast one on us, but that's my understanding is, we'll get that name today. And yeah, and then that's it. So again, tamper those expectations. Then there is the state of play. And it's like, hey, what's going to be at the PlayStation State of Play? No idea. Sony is often very good at keeping their secrets. Also like, sometimes state of plays are just kind of off the radar in terms of what they talk about. And I guess that's a nice way of saying like they don't talk about the things that I think I care about or that much of this audience cares about. At least not in a broad way. Everyone has the games here and there in those state of plays that they do definitely care about. But it's not like it's not a BioWare game in that same way that I'll talk about, Mass Effect fans just being this massive audience that is obsessed with that series. Recent state of plays haven't had a lot of those. So it's also been very hard to track it down. Cause when you start sniffing in a certain direction, trying to be like, oh, is it this? Is it this? Is it this? Well, no, none of those things are there. So that's why you can't find out what's going on. But also Sony is pretty good at locking stuff down. So, my guesses are that if Capcom's there, it is just Street Fighter 6. In general, I've heard that Capcom won't have a ton to show this summer. They could have more soon. This is why I'm excited for Dragon's Dogma fans to get their new game announced. I just hesitate to say, hey, you should get excited for it coming in the next few days or next few weeks even, because that's just not what I'm hearing. But again, that could just be my channels are wrong or whatever. But I do think Street Fighter 6 seems like a pretty obvious thing. And it's the kind of thing that Sony really cares about. They promoted they published Street Fighter 5, did a lot of work on that. And then they also, hi kiddo. And then they also have been buying Evo and stuff like that. So I think Street Fighter 6 is probably a likely thing, for this state of play. And then what else? At this point, I'm not sure. I think Final Fantasy 16, I think maybe this show could just be, stuff like that, and then they say at the end of the show up for the Summer Game Fest proper stream with Jeff Keighley, and that's where they'll announce God of War or something like that. Not announce, they'll give the date for God of War at that point or something like that. I just feel like this show really will just be third party and VR. I think VR is should take up a good chunk of it. I hope we get a new Astro. But it's really hard to like start guessing about what we're gonna see. I do have like pretty high expectations for them to bring some surprises, just based on the fact that they're doing something in June again. They've done stuff around this time frame, like usually closer to May. They've done state of plays in there, I think, in the past few years, but still, this is. I mean, they said it's part of Summer Game Fest, and that makes it they feel like, oh, well, then hopefully they'll bring it. And my expectation is this will be a pretty good show. Yeah. So that's what I have. I know it's not a ton, but again, so many boxes, so many things. I fell in the mud at a landfill, a waste management landfill, as part of my moving process. I guess if you want to hear that story, you can ask the question. But I told it on my Twitch stream last night when I was testing the connection. So I don't know if I don't know if I need to repeat it, but we'll see. All right, let's get to the questions. Let's go to chat view here. All right. Okay, so let me close up chat. There we go. Now we got a good view of everything. Whoa. Okay. So, I love you all very much. Thank you for showing up. You've asked some questions, and I would like to do my best to answer them, or at least address the fact that they exist and say I don't know. We'll see. Let's get into it. Let's start here with Slay Make Awesome. What video game is the best game to play in a hotel while moving? Yeah, I mean, this is where obviously handheld portable gaming it shines, right? So obviously for me, it was a lot of Link's Awakening on the Game Boy. I've talked about that before, but even like Tetris and Haniakyo, Alien, and stuff like that. I think like I don't know, something about traveling feels adventurous, so I definitely lean towards like something like Link's Awakening or an RPG. Golden Sun on the Game Boy Advance is definitely one I played on some trips and stuff like that. But yeah, I think when you're in a hotel, I like to, especially when it's like, okay, we've done a lot of stuff and now it's okay to just like lay on the bed for a bit. At that point, I'm like, okay, I want to get into something serious, kind of like a or you know, maybe on the border between serious and like summer novel, where it's like, oh, it's also kind of cheap and throwaway. But yeah, adventurous is definitely the adjective. Is that what that is? That's what I keep going to. From Looter Jennings, what are the odds that we actually see something about a new Silent Hill this Game Mess season? I think that they're fairly good. And I suppose really this state of play just needs one big thing. And if it's not Final Fantasy 16, which I think it could be, Silent Hill does make a lot of sense. My understanding is Sony is putting a lot of effort into the Silent Hill stuff and is involved in most of the games. But I think it's very likely that we see some Silent Hill by the end of this summer. And really, at this state of play, it seems like this would be the point where, I mean, it's a third-party state of play, but we say that every time, don't we? I want to say it's like 60-40 that we do get it. That's where I'm at. You know, I thought I hit the cardioid button and turned it off, but no, we're still good. All right, from Doug Foot. Hello, Mr. Grubb. I hope the move is going well. Instead of asking you what games might be revealed soon, let me ask the opposite. Is there a game that people expect to see that you believe won't be shown this summer? I like to do this when I have like a good answer, but I'm like trying to think like if there's anything. Well, I think it's probably pretty unlikely that we do see like Silent Hill 5. Is that what the next one is called? I think it was Silent Hill 5. I think they probably will show that blooper stuff first. They might tease that there's other things in the works, but that game is still pretty far off from the stuff that we've heard. And then yeah, I don't know. I think a lot of the Microsoft stuff probably will stay quiet. Not, you know, they have a ton of stuff that they've announced and haven't done anything with. But like it haven't like but they haven't even shown gameplay of many of these things. But they can show gameplay of like half of them and then still have a huge number of games. Like they can show half of them and then not have shown anything from Perfect Dark and Contraband and a bunch of other stuff. So I think it's probably how I would put it is there's so much stuff from Xbox, many of it probably not coming until 2024, and some of it probably still slipping into 2025. in those cases, I would expect you're not going to get an update on every single one of those games. Just kind of no way. All right, there are little monkeys climbing all over me. Let's see here. From Slay McAwesome, what should I get for dinner? Or what should I make or get for dinner? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what food you should get, but I think you should go out to eat and sit on a patio somewhere with like the nice ambient string lights above. I drove past the restaurant on the way to this hotel and I saw that, and it looked very nice and pleasant. And I kind of want to do that for myself. Okay, all right. I've done some parenting, and now we can get back to the show. All right, another one from Slain. First we had Baby Yoda. Now we have actual Baby Leia. What baby character should we introduce next into the Star Wars universe? Now, I don't care. That's a spoiler for everybody. So sorry, it's not my fault. Yeah, I mean, we already got Baby Vader before, obviously, right? So that would be the obvious one. But there was a whole prequel trilogy about that. I think that we should get Baby Admiral Akbar, where he's like a guppy or whatever, like just a little tadpole guy swimming around the ocean. I actually would like to see Mon Calamari as a planet like represented in a live action show. Maybe they've done that, and I've just missed it. But I think that'd be very cool. And it all takes place underwater and stuff, and they have their underwater cities. I think that would be fantastic. From Dude Long Couch. Good morning, Jeff. Hope your move is going smoothly. Any idea what Fireproof Studios is up to right now, and will they keep making the Room games? Personally, I hope they are still making the Room games when I'm old and decrepit. Yeah, I mean, the Room games, like you talk about the Room games, those are like one of a handful of games that actually sell at a premium price on mobile. And also on mobile, there's like opportunities to like take stuff like that and put it in, not Apple Arcade, because Apple Arcade wants stuff that's like brand new. I guess the Room games could go into Apple Arcade first. That's probably, maybe they've already started doing that. But even if they've been out for a while, you could put them in the Google Play subscription thing, which probably has a decent number of subscribers, just based on how many Android users there are and the cheap price for that thing. I know no one really talks about it ever. But there's an obvious like windowing pathway for games like that, where it's like you launch it, you sell it for $7 for a year and a half, and then you put it in the Google Play subscription and you start making money from that. And then you make the next one. Like that's a pretty good like 1, 2, 3 sort of profit thing. I expect them to keep doing that, but I don't know what they're up to personally. From Black Card Vinyl, several months ago, you mentioned that Contraband missed several milestones. Do you have any updated info? Is it on track? Will we see gameplay at the Xbox Extravaganza? I'm pretty split on Contraband. I think we might see some more from it, but also it's the kind of thing where it's like that game still feels very far off. It feels further off than others. And yes, they definitely were missing some milestones early on. And that was causing some headaches for Microsoft. But I'll put it this way. When it comes to Xbox, I know what the expectation has been. The expectation has been this entire time that we are going to do an E3 show in 2022, and we want a lot of gameplay. And everyone involved should understand that. And that's been the marching orders since last year. And that, I think we probably get avowed gameplay, I think, this year, even if that's not coming out till next year. And I think Contraband might be like, oh, well, we have a year's notice that we are going to probably be in the show, so let's get something ready. I think there's a strong possibility that is what happened here, and then we do get something from that game. I think a lot of the studios involved could have had those same orders and had reason to like get an asset ready for this E3, but it might just come down to the fact of the messaging Microsoft wants to go with, and whether or not they do want to be like talking about every single one of these games right now and be like, okay, that's awesome. We, shot our wad, for lack of a better expression. And now we have nothing left until next E3, but that's how we work here at Microsoft. We really like having big E3 shows because we never have really been great at that. And we're getting a little bit better each year. And then we kind of will go silent on many of these things until next E3. And again, I'm just going to keep using E3 to talk about this time of year. People are just going to have to deal with it. So yeah, any of those games seem like a likely, sort of guilty party in terms of, they could be part of the lineup for this E3, but that game feels a little bit further out. And on that reason, I would say maybe it's less likely than stuff like Avowed, stuff like a handful of other things that have been in the works for even longer. Like there's a handful of games that have been in the works since 2018, right? And Contraband's not one of those. Contraband's like a little bit later than that. So yeah, I'll tell you what, I hope we get another one just because they used Steely Dan in the first trailer, that teaser. And I would love to see them like just pick another Steely Dan song. Trying to think of Kid Charlemagne. Do Kid Charlemagne and put it to some gameplay. All right, I'll lose my mind. And if it's just me losing my mind, that's fine. Everyone would just be like, man, Jeff is really into this in a weird way. And you know what? You're right. It is weird. And I don't care what you say anymore. From PJ24, I really wanted to like Red Dead 2, but the stiff shooting and the general animation slowness of everything in the game really turned me off. Do you think Rockstar's future games continue to be that way going forward, considering Red Dead 2's sales? I think that they will have a track of games that are very much like Red Dead. And then I think they'll have a track of games that are very much GTA, which, GTA is going to have a lot of that stuff too, but it's going to be a little bit more messy, a little bit more sort of okay with just letting people fill in the gaps with their imagination. Especially in the online mode, which has been very successful and isn't exactly like that, where the animation just takes over and decides it's going to play the game for you. I've talked about Red Dead 2 on the show a whole bunch now, and my issues with it. So I won't repeat those, but I think that they think this is a really good way of making a certain type of big budget game that sets it apart from a lot of other stuff. Like it's actually very different from something like an Assassin's Creed, where you are just going to run over the item and hit the pickup button, and it's just going to zoom into your pockets. And like it's not about the character on the screen acting out the stuff. It is about you getting the dopamine, and you pick that thing up, and really it's you, the person playing the game, and the person on the screen is just basically a really fancy cursor. And it's not about playing these little actors and stuff like that. But those have been successful in one way. And then Red Dead Redemption 2 kind of is successful in this whole other way and even bigger. And so I think they believe this is a good way of going forward. And, I've written this down, and, you go read it again if you really want. But Red Dead Redemption 2 is a disappointment, or whatever I called it. I explained in there that it's like, I think this is a bad direction for video games in general, that I don't want other developers to try to emulate this. I think that most won't try to emulate it because it is so expensive. And I think the return on that investment, in my opinion, isn't worth it, and detracts from other parts of the game that these developers could be focusing on making better. But when it comes to Rockstar, I do believe them to keep going in that direction with at least Red Dead Redemption games, or maybe if they try a new IP or something like that, they will probably make it in this image as well. From I Am the Dizzle. After Norman Reedus leaked Death Stranding 2, it reminded me of Sean Lee, the composer for Bully, leaking Bully 2 in 2009. Whatever happened to that? Kevin's back, Jack. Companies are always working on prototypes and messing around with stuff, and they try, and I'm not an expert on how games get made, but I could tell you from when you have a big company working on a bunch of stuff, in general, it works like this. You put a bunch of names up on a whiteboard or on a shared, workspace online or whatever, and you say, we are considering doing Bully 2. Well, you have a bunch of people at this company that don't just code, and they don't just write words for the game. There are people whose job it is to get stuff, to produce the game. And these producers are like, well, okay, I'm being assigned to Bully 2 and maybe some other stuff, but also Bully 2, and I'm going to produce this game. And what does that mean? It means all right, well, I need to line up some music, and let's go talk to the composer and see if he's available. And if they are, then we'll bring them in and get them set up, and we'll start the process of those negotiations, because everything has to happen in concert. Everything has to happen at the same time. It's not a linear path. It is a bunch of little fingers all crawling in the same direction, like those evil things from Elden Ring. And so very likely they started this process. They said Bully 2 is something we are considering. And then a producer was like, I'm going to be good at my job and go make sure that we get all this stuff ready. And that probably did happen. And then the composer was just like, okay, now I'm waiting to hear what's next. And then no one ever called him back and said what was happening. That's probably how it went down. From Paul W. Graham. Last week you mentioned that a single AAA game failing may spell financial ruin for a studio/publisher. Do you know of any titles currently in development that are must-hits for the studios involved? Yeah, I mean, so anything that Respawn is doing is a must-hit for I guess Apex Legends maybe actually, kind of gives them a little bit of buffer, but Respawn is the sort of golden goose laying, golden egg laying goose for EA, and they got a bunch of projects now. And if one of those is catastrophic, like a catastrophic failure, EA would have to sort of figure out something. Their contingency plan was, okay, DICE isn't working anymore. Now we want everyone to be like Respawn. That we are in the contingency plan for EA. They don't have a contingency plan for what happens next if Respawn begins to fail and that model of making games doesn't work out. It's Respawn, and that's pretty unlikely. And that's not just because of the people working there. It is because of the method at which they employ to use the talent that they bring in. The talent, of course, is crucial. You can't do anything without people. But there's ways to waste talent too, and Respawn is very good at avoiding those pitfalls. But yeah, I mean, any sort of big, expensive game at any studio is really one of these. I mean, if God of War Ragnarok comes out and isn't a major success, that's going to really hurt Sony. Sony spends a lot of money on those games. This is why we are in this diversification process from Jim Ryan, where he's like, listen, we are really good at making these big single-player narrative games with massive budgets that even when they're successful, they aren't making 50% profit margins. They're making 10 to 15% profit margins. And so if one of those goes, and that 10 to 15% profit margin on something like God of War or Horizon, that pays for everything else that is getting a 5 to 10% profit margin or break even, which is even more common. Or what is it, that car soccer ripoff game the car combat game they did, Destruction All-Stars. That's a money losing proposition what they just did there. And so that 10 to 50% pays for everything else. So if one of those doesn't come through and isn't able to pay for itself, let alone all these other games, that is a major hit. And so they want more things that are, they've already got stuff in place. Let's not, please don't take this to mean that Sony is in some sort of dire straits at all. They have figured out this. They've already figured out the solution to this, which is PlayStation Plus. Get a lot of subscribers. You have this huge fan base, this huge hardware install base. Just get many of them subscribed to PlayStation Plus, and that creates regular, reliable revenue that enables them to kind of continue forward. But with these big games, they still want to offset costs in some other ways, and that is why they are like, okay, we want to take this services concept that has made us so resilient through the transition from one generation to the other, and we want to expand that out and have a bunch of games as services and fill in those gaps. And then that if God of War Ragnarok comes out and is a $200 million project or whatever, or more likely the next Naughty Dog game, a $250 million project, you could feel like, okay, yeah, we're gonna have to spend a lot of money on making the game, a lot of money on marketing that game, and it's sort of at this point those are almost loss leaders. Even if they definitely do have that profit margin still. That profit margin is going to be pretty minuscule in comparison to a big successful live service game, which is, this happened on Twitter with John Drake and Dave Lang when I was like, oh, what's the profit margin of most games of a successful game? It was at 15%. But they're like, well, for a really successful game today, the profit margin is sort of infinite. It just keeps going. It's way bigger than that. And that is exactly what Sony is looking for. instead of these games that are at that 15%, which are a sort of liability, where if they do go wrong, they can be detrimental to the bottom line. So, it doesn't exactly answer your question, but I'm sort of answering like the surrounding scaffolding around why this is a problem and how these companies are trying to position themselves to mitigate any of those risks. From X, put name here, X, was Starfield delayed to give 1 versus 100 proper room it deserves? I hope so. I haven't heard much about 1 versus 100 since we first talked about it. But it's definitely the kind of thing where I feel like I've said before, I really think they could just announce it and launch it, next week, 10 days from now. They could just be like, hey, 1 versus 100 is coming, and actually it's coming tonight. Tune in after this E3 stuff, and then come hang out with us and play this game. I think that would be fantastic. I wonder if they still do it as like a live show. I bet they still have live shows, but I think at this point they could even like maybe do some AI stuff to kind of run shows for people, so you can have a bunch of 1 versus 100s going all at the same time. But maybe there's something. They could, like I said, they could do that and then still do the big special live shows. I think that would be awesome. From JP Graber. Hello, Jeff. Love the show. Thank you. I appreciate that. I am moving from Arizona to San Francisco in 10 days and was wondering if you have any tips/tricks for moving long distances. Thanks. Yeah, just like get real cold-hearted about your stuff. It's time to just cut things loose. And if you haven't touched your hanging, like if you have 2 giant like shoe racks that hang from a door filled with cables and old electronics, and you haven't touched anything in there except for maybe once or twice in the last 3 years, and then your wife puts it on the curb, just be like, okay, you know what? She was right. That was the right choice. Especially if you forgot about it. If you forgot to pack it yourself because that's how little you think about it, just be like, oh, okay, yeah. No, that should be on the curb. And then when you go through all the wires, they're strewn across the sidewalk, and you're looking through there and you're like, why do I even have any of this? Why? I mean, if I need anything, I'll just go to Amazon and it'll be here the next day at the latest. So be like that. And then here's my real tip. Don't rent a truck and drive it out to the waste management landfill. Just call a junk removal service right now. Have them bring out a trailer, fill it up with all the stuff that you're going to just end up throwing out, and then call them and they'll take it away. And that's like, it's an upfront cost, but it's relatively low. And that way you don't have to try to fit everything in your trash cans and be worried about like, is everything going to be gone? Or is the trash going to come and take this when I'm gone or something like that? Just call a junk removal company right now, get that stuff set up in place, and it's totally worth it. That was the best decision we made once we started like realizing, oh, we do need that. From Looter Jennings, Pac-Man Museum Plus released last week and is full of bugs, including several severe input lag. How do you manage to fuck up an old arcade ROM so badly? Yeah, I don't. This is not just on Switch, right? The input lag. It's on other things. I've heard that the Switch version like was running kind of weirdly. I haven't had a chance to look at this. I mean, I don't know how you mess this up. It's the kind of thing Pac-Man needs to feel right. That's definitely true for the old arcade games. It's super true for like Pac-Man Championship Edition, like where you need that to feel precise. And so yeah, that's really disappointing to me. And the way you mess that up is there's 2 ways. The first way is you don't go with M2, the company that's great at doing these doing emulation for big companies, and is a company you can just call up and say, hey, do this for me, and they'll do a great job every time. And then you don't call what is it, Deep Ocean, or the other one, Deep Ocean, that doesn't sound right. They used to be like Backbone or something like that. And that's the company that does really great job at collecting all these things and make sure that the emulation is perfect. And they're like, them or M2. Yeah, it's the kind of thing where you try to do it on the cheap and it shows, and you just kind of can't. You can't do that with these things, especially with Pac-Man. Come on. It's still it's like one of the first like memes in gaming where it's like video games aren't just Pac-Man anymore. Like that's how ubiquitous the concept of Pac-Man in video games is, and yet you're going to treat it like this. That's a shame. From It's Just Kevin V. Sorry, I got distracted. I was trying to see how long I've been going. Hey, Mr. Snacks, which games from the big three's first party are you looking forward to most? PlayStation, Xbox, and Nintendo. Also, should I try giving you a new Snacks nickname every week because I like the challenge? Yes. I challenge you to come up with a new one each week. Good luck. Which games from the big three's first party are you looking forward to the most? PlayStation, it's tough because I didn't love God of War. I got kind of bored with it. And I'm trying to see like what else they have first party announced. Okay. I'm just going to assume that Team Asobi is making an Astrobot for PlayStation VR 2. And if that's the case, that is one of my most anticipated games, period. Team Asobi is incredible. I love Astro's Playroom. Although I never finished it. I just played the speedrun stuff. But still, I love that stuff. It feels great. And I love the character. And yeah. So I hope that they are working on that, and if they are, that's my most anticipated game from PlayStation. From Xbox, I don't know. It's got to be one of these new things that they're working on. I think it is probably Avowed. I guess Starfield is actually honestly the real answer. I just kind of I love Bethesda Game Studios games. I get lost in them. I never beat them either. Turns out many of my favorite games I don't ever beat. But that doesn't matter. Like I always say this about like people saying you have to beat the game before you can review it. And I'm like, if all you did was play through Skyrim to beat it, your review would be completely useless to me. It would not tell me anything that I need to know as the way I play like Skyrim or whatever. And so, yeah, I just want to go into Starfield and just go get lost and do a bunch of weird side quests and just see if I can break into a door in an alley somewhere. And then I want to install a bunch of mods and just play it on my own terms. That's what those games are. I just want to tell my own stories in these games. And, there's not a ton of those. That's why Skyrim is so successful, is it provides a platform for telling your own stories. The emergent gameplay is off the charts. And I hope Starfield meets those expectations and then exceeds them. I have very high expectations. I think there's a good chance this game comes out and is a disappointment because of that. But right now, it's video games. What do we do in video games? We get our hopes up. We get excited. We look forward to the next thing because it's intrinsically a technology-driven medium, right? Where, there's some of that in movies, right? Where, okay, I want to see the special effects. But really, it's storytelling, and that's ancient. But games is it's software, and software is very young, and so it's okay to look forward to the next thing instead of just being like, oh, there's a million books out there. Just go read a bunch of stuff you haven't read there. There's ancient literature. You don't have to look forward to the next book. Most people, some people do, but most people are just like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna go to the library and pick a book. But in video games, it's I just want to look forward to what's next because it might do something new that I've never seen before. And Starfield is representative of that for me from Microsoft. And then from Nintendo, Breath of the Wild 2. That's an easy one. Oh, oh man, I sneezed. Excuse me. I tried to stop it. Oh man. Whew, okay. Don't ever try to stop a sneeze. It's not good for you. Unless you're doing GrubbSnax. And then Nintendo, it's Breath of the Wild 2. I really like. I love Breath of the Wild. It's probably my favorite game of all time. Up there, it's probably the best game of all time. And so yeah, obviously Breath of the Wild 2. But I really want to see what the Mario team is doing. Mario team is been very quiet since. Well, okay, we say that they obviously were working on Bowser's Fury, and so maybe it's going to take them longer to reload than I keep thinking it will. But I would, if they come to this E3 with Mario Odyssey 2 or that rumored Donkey Kong game that they were working on, I'll be ecstatic. And that could be 2D or 3D, but I think I actually probably want a 3D platformer from them. But yeah. Well, honestly, if it's a new 2D Mario, or I think I've said this before, if that new Donkey Kong game that they're working on is you play as Mario and it's a successor to Donkey Kong 94 and Donkey Kong versus Mario and the minis and whatever, if it's a successor to that, especially if it's 3D, that would be incredible. But if it's 2D even, it has a really good art style. Boy, that would just be fantastic. But that's where I'm at with Nintendo. All right. From Vesselin. Hey, hello, Mr. Snacks. Appreciate. Ooh, hang on. Let me yell at these kids real quick. All right. From Vesselin. Hello, Mr. Snacks. Appreciate you doing a show today and hope the move is going well. Is there anything to the rumors that NetEase is acquiring Quantic Dreams? Could David Cage be out if they were acquired? Yeah, I don't know. I think that I'm trying to remember what I could say. I think that was a Tommy rumor, right? Tom Henderson did that one, and again, credit for Tom for the Dragon Age stuff today. He said anything before I did, but this one I heard this, and then we looked into it, and I'll say at least Quantic Dream said that there was. I don't know if they said there was nothing there. They said there's not much to the story, but they could be lying. So I don't know. If they do acquire him, would David Cage be out? I doubt it. I mean, what does NetEase want Quantic Dream for, if not to have David Cage be like his weird self-promoting self? I doubt he would be out. It's not like I guess I don't know NetEase's culture. I shouldn't assume, but I would. If I were to assume, I would think that they're acquiring them in part to have David Cage. From Z-Crits, how long until we finally see a mainline series Pokemon game with at least some form of voice acting? I don't know. They they keep getting away with it, so they keep doing it. And their games sell better than almost anything. It's like, it's like if they put out a GTA every year. It's kind of how Pokemon sells. So, are they going to change up the form? Like, we talked a little bit ago about how there's people on teams that just take care of certain jobs. And so when you start a project, that person just starts doing their job, and they just end up like bringing people in and like, yeah, the producer goes out and gets the composer. It just seems like at the Pokemon Company, at Game Freak, there just is no one in charge of even thinking about voice acting, and they've not addressed that, and so it's just never been something that gets figured out, and they just keep putting out the games, and they sell great. So it kind of feels like one of those. If they get a really poorly received Pokemon game in the next couple of years and they need a reboot, I wouldn't be surprised if voice acting is one of the first things they try to do to sort of be like, hey, look, we are investing in this series. But as is, I don't know, the way that they are working on these games, I think they're just like, we are going to make the improvements where we can, where the stuff where we always make improvements. And then beyond that, we're not going to improve the visuals all that much, and we're not going to improve we're not going to bring in voice acting at all. And I think it's going to continue being that way until there's some major hiccup that forces them to rethink the way they do things, and maybe forces them to bring in new management to like move stuff around and bring in new people to handle those responsibilities. From Chamurai, hello, Mr. Snacks. A new Pokemon named Lechonk was announced yesterday, and I can't stop saying it. Can you help? Well, let me say it a few times to see how it feels in the old mouth. Lechonk. 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 Okay, that's fun. That's Lechonk. Wow, okay. No, that's my day. All right, well, I can't help because you've infected me. So thank you, Chamurai. And shouts to Lechonk. From LX Predator, hi, Jeff. Moving was one of the worst experiences of my life. I'm praying for you. What is the update on your list that says Xbox minus Bethesda? Yeah, I mean, Bethesda obviously is going to be there. That's just a joke. But it's just like, if two of their biggest games are getting delayed to next year, we're probably not going to get a ton of new stuff from Bethesda, right? Like, they're not going to, except for people are really hopeful for a Wolfenstein 3. And I guess I am too, but I just have a little faith that that's going to happen anytime soon. So I think if they bring some announcements, I'll be surprised. I think Bethesda's mostly probably going to just bring updates on Redfall and Starfield. From Little Dansome Man, very good. Josh Sawyer had a vaguely teasy tweet reply to Xbox showcase announcement. Do you know if whatever he's working on will show up at the June 12th showcase? Almost certainly, and I think that game is even out this year. I think there's a strong chance that game is out this year, or at least by the end of the fiscal year. That's me speculating a little bit, but we've talked about this game before. I think we did a whole show like focused on this game. It is a historical murder investigation RPG. I think it's set in, I can't remember the setting exactly. I think it was like Rome, like ancient Rome or something like that. And yeah, it's supposed to be kind of a smaller project, but it's still going to have sort of big budget production values, I think. But yeah, it's supposed to be a little bit more experimental. So yeah, and I've always heard that's one of the games that will come out this year, along with maybe that Project Belfry from Stoic. So yeah, I think it's a really good sign. And I will say, I think I might have said on this show as well before that Josh Sawyer on Twitter has seemed very relaxed and chilled and confident, and I think he is in a good place with that game. And that assessment is all based on the way he's been tweeting recently. He's been going to Renaissance fairs and stuff, and I think he had a booth at a biking swap or whatever. And he was like, "Oh yeah, I'm just swapping parts and just hanging out on the weekend and drinking a beer." I'm like, he seems way too relaxed for where this game should be in development. And maybe that's just good work-life balance. Maybe they've really prioritized that. But also I just think that maybe the game is in a really good position. I bet he starts doing that because they do have their E3 asset ready, and they do have the game in a place where the timeline is very clear about when they're going to be able to get it out. And so yeah, I'm pretty hopeful about that one. I think it's gonna, Josh Sawyer's got his fans, and it's the kind of game that I think could steal a lot of hearts this year, where it's you weren't expecting it, and even when it gets announced, you're like, oh, I don't know if I'm gonna care about this, and then everyone starts playing it, and it gets good word of mouth. That is my expectation for what is going to happen with that game. From It's Me, what's with the lack of Halo support on the Steam Deck? Microsoft always says they won't want people to be able to play their games everywhere. Seems untrue in this case. I mean, it's got to come down to the anti-cheat, right? It's the anti-cheat. I guess I don't know for sure. Yeah, it's a bummer. It stinks. I think they probably will figure this out eventually, but as we've seen, the Halo team they're struggling with a lot of the aspects of that game, and getting and running on Steam Deck is probably pretty low on the priority list for the fires they need to put out with Halo. But yeah. All right, we've been going for almost 50 minutes. I'm going to answer a couple more, but we're going to wrap up pretty soon. I know it's a shorter show, but again, thank you for being patient with me and dealing with me. I'm going to see if there's anything here, but then I'm going to scroll up to the top. So if you want to ask your question again, feel free to do so. From Colonel Sanders 21, what's your go-to continental breakfast selection? Bagels, apples, and bananas. I like bagels, apples, and bananas. I like to bagel, apples and bananas. I hope that song gets stuck in your head. It's not actually the words, but it's what it sounded like. I don't know. The truth is, the kind of person I am, I don't like thinking about my meals and if I go to continental breakfast I could just, head empty, just massive bimbo energy, walking down to the continental breakfast, stare at what's in front of me, and just pick whatever looks good. And that's how I live my life. And that feels good because it's I don't like coming up with plans for breakfast or getting my hopes up that something will be there and that's not there. That's just welcoming unwanted stress into my life. And so I just walk to the food, I look at it, and I pick what looks good. That is how I live. That I'm just a garbage human, but that's the truth. Devin007, are you at a Holiday Inn? I'm not actually. I'm at a Bonvoy Claremont. I don't know what it is. Actually, no, it's some Inn Suites, and it's pretty nice. I'm pretty happy with it. Although they have these LG TVs, cheap LG TVs that obviously made for hotels, and it's got like a Netflix button, and you could sign in, and it automatically signs you out when you check out and stuff. But they are so laggy and slow; they are miserable to use. All right, I'm at the top. Do you think we get an update on Everwild this mess? No, I don't. Almost done, kid. Here, do you want a tissue? Hey, let me finish up. Just a couple more minutes, dude. Well, as soon as I finish up here, we're gonna go on a walk. I'm really looking forward to it. For Pyro Beanie, now that Modern Warfare 2 reveal is next week, can we expect a new engine, or is it going to use the Modern Warfare 2019/Vanguard engine? The thing with engines is they are, and I know this is not like how it's marketed or talked about publicly, but the way it usually works is this is still the Modern Warfare engine from way back. It's still the Call of Duty engine from 2001 or whatever. They just are constantly updating the tools, and they're swapping in things and swapping out other things. I guess it's the ship of Theseus thing, right? Is that the right reference? Again, good references, right? If I got this one right. Like, is it still the same engine if you've swapped out all the parts and rewritten the code a million times and stuff like that? But deep down underneath, this is still that id Tech from way back then. And they've just constantly been improving it. And because like throwing out all your tools doesn't make sense. Like when you look at a Call of Duty game, it still like looks like a Call of Duty game, and the way things are animated and stuff like that. And that's been true this entire time. But like, to answer the question that you're really asking, like, have they done one of those big updates to the point where they're like, this would be like Unreal Engine 4 to Unreal Engine 5, like the equivalent of that? They've probably not done a major overhaul, but it's probably a pretty big step forward as they get closer and closer to just doing only new gen games. But they're probably, it is a process. It is not a light switch. It's not a 1 to 0. It is slowly it transforms into this newer and newer thing until you look back, you're like, oh, we are in a completely different version number with this stuff. Especially when it comes to Call of Duty games, which gets a new one every year, except for maybe next year. From Talking Badoof, can we order room service? Yeah, I'm sure they have some sort of room service here, but I don't know. The thing is, it does have its own kitchen, so we brought a lot of our food from home, and we've been making food, which has been nice. From Drew Mata, now that you're heading into Wings territory, how do you feel about the iconic goal horn sound having to be a recording in their new venue versus the real horn from Joe Louis? I don't love that. I feel like you do what it takes to figure out how to do that for real. You just gut it from Joe Louis and transplant it over there, or you pay a contractor a lot of money to replicate that and get it to sound right in Little Caesars. But I don't feel great about it. From Maddie Hawks, with EA wanting to be acquired, do you see a future where AAA games are only first party or Tencent/NetEase/ etc., or will other corporations want to hop in like NBC Universal? So the way it's going to work is EA gets acquired or merges with someone. They're probably not going to get acquired or merge with Sony or Microsoft, and definitely not Nintendo. So they'll still kind of basically be third party. But to like entertain the possibility that you're talking about, if EA did get acquired by Microsoft or Sony and then Take-Two did the same thing, like, would there be no more third party publishers? No. Companies would begin filling. I mean, Embracer is trying to be like that next big one. Companies like Devolver Digital have gone public, and they're not going to go public and then keep making the same level of games they've always made. We've already seen every year their games get a little bit bigger, a little bit more expensive, a little bit bigger, a little bit more expensive. That's going to keep stepping forward, and then like we just talked about, we're gonna look back. And we're going to see that, oh, this is a company that's completely different in terms of the size of games they make now than what they used to be like. So yeah, I'm going to have to go deal with these kids now. But yeah, this is the way this works. A big company gets acquired. That creates funding opportunities. It creates a space in the market for another company to step in. And maybe EA and Ubisoft and Take-Two and Activision, specifically EA and Activision and Ubisoft, maybe they should just kind of shuffle off, go take some money, and let someone else take over those games and create space in the market for someone who's willing to take more risks. That's kind of how I feel. Activision doesn't make a lot of games. EA doesn't make a lot of games. Ubisoft is on a process, a pathway toward making fewer and fewer games. They've said so repeatedly. Maybe they should be replaced with a company that wants to make a lot of games, and several companies that want to make a lot of games. We don't know what Embracer is going to be like, but Embracer wants to make a lot of games. And if those games make them money, like if they put out games that are good and we spend a lot of money on them, they're going to want to replicate that and make even more games. And to me, this is the system that we have, which is imperfect and actually overall kind of not great. And I've talked about the alternatives to that before, but this is the system that we do have working as intended. And then if you want an alternative, you lobby your congressman and say, hey, can we get public funding for art like video games so people don't have to worry about the profit motive and stuff like that? And that's the alternative to me. Okay, 55 minutes and 55 seconds as I look down at the recording time. That's a beefy show. That's pretty good. From a hotel room, that feels very good. I'm going to wrap up. Let's see how's it going in chat. Hopefully everything held up. Looks like the video did pretty well. I think the audio's doing okay. I am very, very happy that we got to do this. It was one of those things I was looking forward to. I was looking forward to this and doing Last of the Nintendogs. My moving took a little bit longer, so Last of the Nintendogs actually got shuffled, and we're still trying to figure out if we're going to be able to do that this week. But yeah, yeah. And so it's, but yeah, I was looking forward to this. I'm glad we got to do it. I'm glad we all got to hang out. Thank you all for watching. Yes, the streak continues. What is it? 49 episodes straight, 49 weeks straight. We've done this show. So, I'm feeling very good about it. Let's all try to keep, you know what? Let's try to keep all the streaks in our life going. But otherwise, thank you all so much for tuning in. I appreciate it. Let's go enjoy E3. I will definitely have a lot to say as this stuff happens. I'll probably be on a bunch of podcasts, so look out for that. People have been inviting me on stuff all week. So if I get settled in time, I'll be all over the place, but of course I'll have less than 10 dogs and GameSpeak Decides and stuff like that. You can see me there. All right. So with a lot happening in the next few days, let's get ready for it. But for now, let's say goodbye. Everyone, thank you for tuning in. Until next one, have a good one. Take care of yourself, and goodbye. Let's go for a walk with these kids.